Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Straightforward topic for you today. Let's do it. Night Owls of Reddit. What's the scariest thing you've heard at night? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was 16, home alone, and heard some sneaky steps from the outdoor stairs to the garden when I was brushing my teeth at 4 a.m. I knew how it sounded if my parents went up there, which would be very loud, and if I wasn't standing in the bathroom, then I'd never hear these. So I knew it was someone who wasn't supposed to be here. I went upstairs to look out the window, and there was a bald man in black clothing just standing, completely still, staring out in the air. Threatened him with a knife, lol, and he just barely moved his eyes when he noticed me and went off. My man in the bathroom blowing his nose, but he was in bed with me and it was 3 a.m., and my purse dumped on the floor and any medications in a prescription bottle from the bathroom gone with the back door left wide open. I was working night audit at my hotel when I heard someone yell F into the atrium lobby, then a sound like a crack of thunder. I'll never forget watching a man jump from 9 stories down into our lobby and hitting the banister on the way down. Ended up quitting the next day and never went back. My boyfriend at the time and I were on our way across the house to the garage. Pitch black, total silence, dead of night. He was walking in front of me. I heard this horrifying, otherworldly scream, growl, or hiss. It started some distance behind me and to the left, rushed right past my head, and faded some distance in front of me and to my right. It was so loud my ears physically hurt. My boyfriend didn't hear anything. I was working around 10:30 p.m. on my last break, working from home. I stepped out into the yard and my doggo followed. All of a sudden, he alerted on the woods beside my house and started growling like I'd never heard. He used his body to press me back against the porch, all while growling like he was about to kill something. It was dark, so I didn't see anything, but from his growls, there was something bad in the woods. I've never been scared where I live, but that night, all I could think about was how lucky I have the goodest boy to watch over me. A high-pitched scream, the thud of a body hitting dirt, and crying, in that order. I was sure that somehow one of my kids had fallen out of the window. Turned out to be cats fighting. One knocked the other off the fence, then they growled at each other about it. In my old house, a loaf of bread slipped off the side and sent a bowl crashing to the tiled floor in the kitchen. It was probably the cat on a side that had caused it, but definitely shit me up, especially when I was just drifting off. Another time was when the shower curtain rail fell in the bath. It was a tension rod. I had taken it down earlier in the day when cleaning, but it made such a noise. I don't know if it's our heightened senses when it's nighttime or dark, where common noises or creaks or cracks resonate so much stronger at night. So interesting. I had a pack of coyotes right outside my house. You hear them all the time around here, but I've never once seen them. One night, I just heard this noise that sounded like a bunch of bloodthirsty, hungry dogs just outside my house. Again, I could hear them, but couldn't see them no matter which window I looked out. Pretty spooky, like hearing a movie monster and you can't find it. You expect it to just pop up behind you at any moment. Knocking on my door at 2 a.m. for half an hour when I lived in a shady apartment. He'd knock and knock every half a minute for half an hour straight, and I'd be too scared to move. I didn't have a gun and had just moved to Texas. Turns out it was just homeless Chris, who just got out of jail again, looking for the previous tenant. We grew pretty close over the 4 years I lived there. Every time he'd get back out of jail, he'd walk from downtown to my place. We'd talk, have a few smokes. I'd make him a sandwich, pack grandma's, and pack him some Ferrero Rochers, his favorite candy, and waters, a Goodwill sweater, and off he'd go. I still have his grandma's phone number. Now that I'm remembering, I'll tell his story too. His mom cheated on his dad when he was really young. The dad left. The mom remarried. The man she remarried wanted nothing to do with them. Real nice guy with a great smile. But holy shit, was he dangerous. He offered to hit someone for me for free if I ever needed it, and I politely declined. He was 34 when I met him, and his only goal was to find a job. In 4 years, the only job he ever got was an old lady that would feed him eggs and pay him $5 to chat once a day. He was trying to save enough money to move to Wisconsin because the Green Bay Packers are owned by everyone there. I got him a bus ticket and a Rapala hat so he'd fit in. But a month later, he was back at my door at 2 a.m. Hearing the doorknobs rattle and scratching on the walls and ceilings at my grandparents' place. Sometimes you'll get footsteps knocking around 3 a.m. They have a house in the woods around the northern part of Arizona. Only one streetlight that's put up, and the rest is pitch black. And mind you, at the time there wasn't running water at the time, so we had to go to the outhouse that was in the tree line 15 yards away from the house. I'm Native American, but I do believe it was skinwalkers. They're for sure real where I'm from. Typical activity they do. I sometimes think I'm effing schizophrenic because I hear what sounds like footsteps, both when I'm home, alone, and when everyone's deep asleep, or sometimes it sounds like things are moving around. I can accept creaking in random parts of the house because it's fairly old, but I cannot accept what sounds like footsteps walking up the stairs when no one's there. On a less creepy note, by far the scariest thing I've ever single night is when my sister rolls in her sleep because her bed is pressed up against her wall. Our rooms share a wall, and she kicks it. A small bump. Meh, but sometimes her legs effing slam into the wall. Home alone besides my dad, and his room is on the opposite side of the house, and I heard this like robotic mechanical snickering in the room next to me, which leads to nowhere. No TV is in that room. I got scared and FaceTimed my friend, and it was all really quiet when we were trying to sleep, and then she just said my name, and I knew she was gonna say she heard it, and she did. Never found out what it was, but it was like alien sounding. It almost sounded similar to Kamek from New Super Mario 2. When it shoots out fireballs at you in Bowser's castle level. I wasn't falling asleep until or when I heard it, I was wide awake. About when I was 7, I always stayed up late. One specific night was the one I'd never forget. It was cold and raining with some pretty bad hail, and I was camping. It was about 3:03 in the morning when I heard it. Something far out letting out a scream, and it did not sound human, that's for sure. I tried to ignore it, but it kept getting louder and closer to my tent. I soon got so damn scared that I curled into a ball under my blankets, whispering to myself, "Boogeyman, be gone." And now, I could hear the thing running on the crunchy leaves circling my tent. Its breathing was raspy and sounded distorted. What felt like hours were just seconds, as I felt it glaring at my tent. If then, and let it out a growl, and one more scream before bolting back into the forest. To this day, that night still haunts me. Okay, this is the dad and me coming out, Mr. Fun Sponge over here, but 7 years old? You're up at 3 a.m.? Not cool. My room sits at the front of the house, and one of my walls are mostly windows, which look the front yard. I keep the curtains closed and make sure that nothing can see in. It's a massive fear of mine. Anyways, you can imagine the paranoia that I'd feel on the first few weeks of sleeping in that room. If there would be a tapping on the window or a sound just outside. Funnily enough, both happened separately. First one was about 3-ish years ago. It was pretty late at night, maybe 11 p.m., and I swear on my mother's life, I hear a grown-ass man grunt and moan just outside my window. Like, literally right outside it. Spooked me so hard that I went to spend the rest of the night in my sister's room. Second one was actually pretty recent, and it made my heart leap out of my chest. Early morning, I woke up to the sound of something slamming into my window. I was frozen in my bed about half an hour, and I considered the only had the courage to see what it actually was. When my sister and brother got word of it, got out of bed, turns out a bird flew into it. Poor thing had its face blown off from the impact. Nevertheless, it was a terrifying experience. I was outside smoking late one night and heard the oddest noise ever. It was incredibly loud and deep, like I was hearing something massively loud from a good distance away, if that makes any sense. It was in the cadence of the Jaws music, like dun-dun. I feel like I could feel it hit the ground. It was so loud and so deep, it was absolutely jarring. And then the sky turned to daylight. It wasn't an explosion of light. It was like a very fluid dark to bright daylight, and then back to dark. About 10 to 15 seconds total. I sat in shock for about 30 seconds to a minute before it happened again. I'm someone that always looks for a logical explanation, and my brain landed on a blown transformer or something similar. But I've heard and seen that happen many times. It wasn't even remotely similar. I must have watched hundreds of YouTube videos of blown transformers and substations, and again, not the same, especially the light. I scoured through Reddit, Twitter, Nextdoor, and everything else. Not a peep about it. I know there has to be a logical explanation, and I've never gonna know what it is. I don't believe in supernatural or religious shit, but in that moment, I thought that sounded like the gates of hell opening. And when the sky lit up, I thought, oh shit, is this the rapture real? Probably those times I've driven at night in the rain. Can't really see because of the road, the lines, a country boy's truck practically high beaming my rear view, and the windshield being covered in water reflecting light, and I tire over a median bump I didn't see. The bath hunk. Cars are surprisingly well designed for clearing obstacles. You'd think you would damage your undercarriage though, or shear off the bottom of the bumper. And sites are terrible at keeping up the maintenance of lane reflectors and reflective road paint. Not at night, but really early in the morning. I was smoking a joint and started to hear someone scream very faintly. It was all kind of in intervals, and I thought maybe someone got AR'd. I went outside to maybe hear the direction, but I couldn't hear enough in which direction it came from. I asked into nothing if anything was alright, but it kind of stopped. Then it started again. I don't know what or who it was, but I was and felt as if I couldn't really do anything, so I went back inside.